In the beginning, there was only the one above all, the supreme being beyond comprehension, the source of all existence. From the infinite void, the multiverse was born, a sea of realities infinite in number and varied in form. Among them stood Earth 616, the prime universe, destined to witness the rise and fall of gods, heroes, and monsters. Before time was measured, entities of unfathomable power took shape. The cosmic beings, eternity, infinity, death, and oblivion, emerged as embodiments of fundamental truths. Galactus, the devourer of worlds, awoke from the dying cosmos that preceded this one, destined to maintain the balance of life and death by consuming entire planets. The Celestials came next, towering space gods who sculpted life across the universe. They visited Earth in its prehistoric infancy and conducted genetic experiments on early hominids. From these manipulations came three races: the human, the grotesque deviants, and the godlike Eternals. The Eternals would ascend to near immortality, while the deviants, twisted and evermutating, would be cast into the shadows. Humanity was left to evolve naturally, unaware of the ancient wars waged in the darkness beyond their skies. As millennia passed, gods were born of belief. In Asgard, Odin Allfather ruled over Norse deities, his son Thor destined to walk the earth and protect it. In Olympus, Zeus and his children, including Hercules, shaped myths that would echo across ages. In ancient Egypt, En-Sabah-Nur, the first mutant, later known as Apocalypse, rose with the power of the Celestials, proclaiming survival of the fittest as divine law. Humanity's story unfolded quietly until the 20th century. It was during World War II that the first age of heroes dawned. Dr. Abraham Erskine, seeking a way to create the ultimate soldier, developed the super soldier serum. Steve Rogers, a frail yet courageous man, volunteered and was transformed into Captain America. With his unbreakable shield and indomitable will, he led Allied forces against the Red Skull and his Nazi science division, Hydra. Alongside him fought Namor the Submariner, Prince of Atlantis, and the original Human Torch, an android named Jim Hammond. Together, they formed the Invaders, champions of freedom in a world at war. But as peace returned, the age of heroes faded. Captain America vanished beneath Arctic ice, presumed dead. The world moved on until the atomic age reawakened ancient legacies. Radiation, once feared, became the spark of mutation and transformation. A young genius named Reed Richards led an expedition into space with his fiancée Susan Storm, her brother Johnny, and his best friend Ben Grimm. Bombarded by cosmic rays, they returned to Earth changed. Reed gained elasticity and became Mr. Fantastic. Sue turned invisible, Johnny burst into flame as the Human Torch, and Ben became the rock-skinned thing. Together, they became the Fantastic Four, the first modern super team, explorers as much as heroes. Their discovery of the negative zone and encounters with beings like the Silver Surfer and Galactus brought Earth into contact with the wider cosmos. Not long after, young Peter Parker, bitten by a radioactive spider, gained the proportionate strength and agility of the arachnid. Haunted by the death of his Uncle Ben, he learned that with great power must come great responsibility. He became Spider-Man, a lone guardian of New York streets, facing villains like the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, and the Kingpin. Elsewhere, Professor Charles Xavier founded a school for gifted youngsters. He believed in peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants, beings born with the X gene, granting them extraordinary powers. His first class included Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Iceman, and Angel. They were the X-Men, defenders of a world that hated and feared them. Their nemesis, Magneto, once Xavier's friend, believed humanity would never accept mutants. He formed the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to fight for mutant supremacy. Meanwhile, in a hidden land of Wakanda, T'Challa inherited the mantle of Black Panther, protector of his people and guardian of vibranium. He became one of Earth's most powerful and wise monarchs, bridging tradition and technology. Elsewhere still, the blind lawyer Matt Murdock fought injustice as Daredevil. Empowered by radioactive chemicals that enhanced his remaining senses, he became the devil of Hell's Kitchen. And deep in the shadows, Frank Castle declared war on crime as the Punisher, born of tragedy and driven by vengeance. The world was changing rapidly. Tony Stark, industrialist and genius, built a suit of armor to escape captivity and became Iron Man. Haunted by his past as a weapons dealer, he sought redemption through heroism. Thor descended from Asgard, proving worthy of Mjolnir and fighting to protect Midgard, Earth. Bruce Banner, caught in a gamma explosion, was transformed into the Incredible Hulk, a being of rage and raw power. These heroes, facing threats greater than any one of them could withstand, banded together when Loki, Thor's half-brother, sought to conquer Earth. They formed the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes. Their ranks would grow to include Hawkeye, Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, Vision, and more. As threats emerged from other worlds, other dimensions, and even time itself, the Marvel Universe expanded. Cosmic defenders like the Guardians of the Galaxy took flight. The Inhumans revealed their secret kingdom of Attilan. Doctor Strange, once a vain surgeon, learned the mystic arts and became Sorcerer Supreme, guardian against supernatural evils. All the while, secret wars raged. The Skrulls and Kree, alien empires, brought their ancient conflicts to Earth's doorstep. The Phoenix Force returned, empowering and consuming Jean Grey, leading to the tragic Dark Phoenix saga. Mutant kind suffered near extinction during the decimation, when Scarlet Witch whispered 3 words, "No more mutants." The Civil War divided heroes when a catastrophic battle led to legislation requiring superhumans to register. Iron Man led the pro-registration forces. Captain America led the resistance. The conflict ended in tragedy, with Steve Rogers assassinated. Secret invasions followed. Skrulls had infiltrated Earth's heroes, replacing them for years. Norman Osborn seized power and turned the Avengers into a tool of fear. As always, heroes rose to reclaim hope. Steve Rogers returned. Thor rebuilt Asgard. The multiverse itself shattered in the incursions. Worlds collided. Dr. Doom seized godhood in Battleworld, forging a patchwork reality. From its ruins, the universe was reborn. New heroes rose, Kamala Khan as Ms. Marvel, Miles Morales, a new Spider-Man, Riri Williams, the genius Ironheart. The legacy endured. Through cosmic crises, civil wars, and secret empires, the Marvel Universe evolved. It is a place where power demands sacrifice, where even gods face doubt, and where the smallest acts of courage shape the fate of all. And it is ever unfolding, a living story written in the stars, whispered by legends, and echoed in the hearts of those who dare to stand for something greater than themselves. In the time after the universe was reborn from the collapse of the multiverse, Earth 616 stood once more, subtly changed, yet deeply familiar. Reed Richards, having helped reshape existence itself, chose to explore the cosmos with his family, entrusting Earth to new guardians. The Fantastic Four vanished from public sight, but their legacy persisted, inspiring generations. Heroes flourished in every corner of the globe. Kamala Khan, an Inhuman empowered by Terrigen Mist, embraced her identity as Ms. Marvel. Her courage and kindness made her a beacon for young metahumans discovering their place in a chaotic world. Miles Morales, the Spider-Man of another universe folded into Earth 616, fought crime with the same valor and conscience as Peter Parker. They shared a bond forged in pain and duty, two web-slingers in one city, united by principle. The mutant race faced both resurgence and crisis. With the rise of the island nation Krakoa, mutants found sovereignty. Led by a council of the most powerful and morally complex figures, Magneto, Xavier, Apocalypse, and others, they offered sanctuary to all mutants. Using resurrection protocols developed through a synthesis of mutant powers, death for mutants became reversible. This changed the moral fabric of their existence. With one voice, they declared, "Mutants are no longer the hunted. We are the future." But peace was fragile. Betrayals brewed beneath the surface, and outside forces viewed Krakoa with suspicion. Even among their own, doubt festered. Moira MacTaggart, once thought a human ally, was revealed to be a mutant who lived multiple lives, each iteration shaping her ideology. She warned that every future led to mutant extinction unless a radical path was taken. Elsewhere, galactic empires stirred. The Shi'ar, Kree, and Skrull civilizations evolved through war and uneasy alliances. The Kree and Skrull merged under a new banner. The Alliance, led by Hulkling, Teddy Altman, a half-Kree, half-Skrull born of love and prophecy. As Emperor Doric VIII, he sought to end cycles of conflict through unity. On Earth, the Avengers weathered cosmic cataclysms and inner rifts. They reformed again and again, anchored by a rotating cast. Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Ghost Rider, She-Hulk, Blade, and others. Facing threats like Mephisto's multiversal council of evil, the team became less a lineup and more a legacy. Tony Stark wrestled with existential questions. His mind backed up and resurrected more than once, questioning whether he was still the original. Thor became All-Father, inheriting the responsibilities of Odin and wielding knowledge beyond mortal reach. But he too was tormented by doubt, unworthy at times, divine at others. In the shadows of the multiverse, darker truths emerged. The One Who Remains, a variant of Kong the Conqueror, manipulated timelines to prevent chaos, but at the cost of free will. Time fractured, and variants spilled into the world. Heroes turned villains, villains turned gods. Loki, ever reborn and ever evolving, played both savior and trickster. Doctor Strange faced incursions again. Multiversal collapses surged back into reality, and with them came dark reflections. The Illuminati, covert guardians of Earth's greatest secrets, reformed to confront these existential threats. Yet secrecy bred distrust, and the price of their gambits was often blood. New villains rose. Null, god of the symbiotes, descended upon Earth with a darkness that swallowed light itself. The King in Black challenged all of Earth's defenders until Eddie Brock, once a broken man, ascended and became a cosmic god. Venom became something more, a protector of the timeline, a living deity of redemption. Galactus fell. Thor, wielding newfound power and rage, became his herald. Yet even this cosmic rebalancing was temporary. For with each god slain or reborn, a greater void waited. Heroes aged, died, returned. Steve Rogers reclaimed the shield after decades of struggle, once again embodying the ideal. But legacy was no longer his alone. Sam Wilson, the Falcon, became Captain America with his own voice, speaking for the world as it was, not as it had been. Legacy endured in all corners. Riri Williams, young and brilliant, carved her identity as Ironheart. Kate Bishop followed in the footsteps of Hawkeye. Yelena Belova walked the line between spy and sister. Generations overlapped, not to replace but to amplify. The Marvel Universe became a mosaic, every color, every creed, every power, every flaw. And still, the universe expanded. Beyond time, beyond space, the living tribunal judged balance. The Beyonders stirred, curious and terrible. The cosmos whispered of a final horizon, the end of all things. But until that distant sunset, Earth 616 remained a crucible. A place where legends were forged in fire, where justice was never easy, and where anyone, no matter how small, could rise to become a hero. Because in this world, stories never end. They only evolve. From the depths of street-level struggle to the farthest reaches of the cosmos, the Marvel Universe remained in constant flux. In Hell's Kitchen, Matt Murdock resumed his vigil as Daredevil, torn between his faith and fury. He battled corruption not only in the alleys but within himself, bearing the weight of both justice and guilt. His war against the Hand reignited, their darkness seeping into every layer of society. Through the ashes of tragedy, Elektra rose not merely as a warrior but as a new daredevil, honoring Matt's mission with her own fierce resolve. Together, they became twin shadows of justice in a world dimmed by compromise. In New York's underbelly, Wilson Fisk ascended. Once the kingpin of crime, he became mayor of New York, blurring the line between law and tyranny. His influence spread like a web, ensnaring heroes and civilians alike. But even kings fall. When he pushed too far, hunting heroes as fugitives, he ignited a war he could not win. Heroes rose in defiance. Luke Cage, once a reluctant protector, stood tall as a symbol of defiant strength. Jessica Jones, haunted by trauma, continued to dismantle predators with truth and blunt force. Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, balanced mysticism with justice, forging peace between Kunlun and Earth. Together, they stood as the heartbeat of the city. In Latveria, Dr. Doom ruled with a cold brilliance. He walked the razor's edge between tyrant and savior. Even the most noble heroes begrudgingly acknowledged his intellect and vision. Doom pierced the boundaries of magic and science, once claiming the power of the Beyonders and battling gods as their equal. But his greatest enemy was always his own pride. Sometimes even Victor Von Doom dreamed of redemption. Sometimes he almost earned it. In Wakanda, Shuri embraced the mantle of leadership, her mind sharper than vibranium itself. She wove tradition and innovation into a new era. T'Challa, the Black Panther, journeyed through realms both political and cosmic, questioning his place as king and protector. He faced betrayal, exile, and revelation that Wakanda had secrets even he did not know. A hidden empire in the stars, an intergalactic Wakandan colony, born of ancient foresight. His people expanded beyond Earth, not in conquest, but in legacy. In the magical realms, Scarlet Witch sought redemption for her sins. Haunted by the reality she once broke, she delved deep into eldritch lore to restore balance. She became a guardian of the lost, walking the edge of chaos and clarity. Her journey was solitary, but never truly alone. Wiccan and Speed, her children born of magic and willpower, continued to evolve. One a mystic emperor, the other a scarlet flash of youth and courage. In the Spider-Verse, the web continued to tangle. Peter Parker aged, scarred by endless battle and loss, but still swung into action. He trained others, bore failures, and clung to hope. His clone, Ben Reilly, fought to reclaim identity. Cindy Moon, Silk, unraveled her own path, born of the same bite yet shaped by solitude. Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, balanced espionage, motherhood, and heroism. The web connected worlds, and from it spun the Spider Society, a multiversal defense against threats to all arachnid-powered protectors. With every new reality came a new spider. Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker, Spider-Ham. The great web, tended by Madam Web, pulsed with infinite threads, each one a destiny. Cosmic tremors returned with the rise of new gods. The Eternals, long hidden, resurfaced. Immortal, aloof, burdened by secrets. Their creators, the Celestials, returned to judge Earth. Would humanity be spared or erased? In a world judged unworthy, heroes rallied not to plead, but to prove. The Eternals themselves fractured, some siding with mortals, others embracing cold cosmic duty. The deviants, their ancient foes, became something more, victims of design, not villains. Through blood, memory, and sacrifice, truth reshaped their myths. Beneath all of it, the very essence of mutation unraveled. The origin of the X gene, the true nature of resurrection, and the cost of immortality came into question. Orcus, a human supremacist alliance of science and hate, emerged as a spear poised to pierce mutant hope. With Sentinel technology, Nimrod units, and AI-born rage, they hunted Krakoa from the shadows. In space, a second Genesis awaited Araco. Mutant kin long lost, warriors forged in realms of war, returned to the fold. Storm led them regal, fierce, divine. Not merely a weather goddess, she became a queen of solar systems. In her eyes burned storms of revolution. Every corner of the Marvel universe sang its own verse. In Canada, Alpha Flight rekindled duty. In England, Captain Britain and the Corps defended the multiverse. In New York, Moon Knight battled madness, gods, and crime with fists of vengeance. In Deep Time, Kong plotted anew. His variants warred among themselves, collapsing timelines like matchsticks. Ramatut, Immortus, Iron Lad, all one man, all different destinies. Yet even Kong feared what loomed beyond the veil, the rise of the Lost One, harbinger of multiversal entropy. And so the stage widened again. Marvel's tapestry shimmered with history, myth, science, and spirit. Every hero a thread, every villain a shadow, every sacrifice a spark. The story marched forward, ever evolving, not toward an ending, but toward the next beginning. In the unending tide of heroism and hubris, new legacies were forged across time and space. Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, carried the stars and stripes not as a symbol of blind nationalism, but as a banner for justice redefined. He fought for the forgotten, the unseen, the discarded. With wings and shield, he became both guardian and challenger of the American dream. Steve Rogers, no longer a man out of time, became its steward, guiding the new age with tempered wisdom. Together, they stood not as relics of war, but as pillars of conscience. Meanwhile, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, walked the knife's edge between atonement and violence. A soldier without a war, he sought peace in battles fought for others. In the dark, he dismantled tyranny before it bloomed. Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, ascended beyond atmosphere and politics. She led the intergalactic alliance of worlds, standing between Kree imperialism and universal balance. Her strength no longer proved in punches, but in leadership. Yet her fists still broke stars when needed. The Marvels, Kamala Khan, Monica Rambeau, and Genisvel rose beside her. Kamala, the polymorph with boundless hope, inspired with her heart more than her powers. Monica, photon-wielding and dimension surfing, connected the micro and macro layers of existence. Genis, torn between madness and cosmic awareness, glimpsed truths few mortals could comprehend. Together, they redefined what it meant to be marvelous. In the void beyond galaxies, Silver Surfer soared. Once Norrin Rad, forever a penitent wanderer, he bore witness to birth and extinction. He defied cosmic fate, challenging Galactus, gods, and entropy itself. He met the Black Surfer, a version of himself who embraced nihilism, and from that clash came rebirth. Even heralds could choose their stars. The Fantastic Four ventured into the unknown as ever. Reed Richards, eternal explorer, sought answers to problems no mind should hold. Susan Storm, the Invisible Woman, remained the team's spine and soul. Johnny Blaze burned with maturity rarely seen beneath his flames. Ben Grimm, the Thing, was still the heart, a rock not only in form but in spirit. Franklin Richards, once a godchild of creation, confronted his diminishing power. He learned that identity was not defined by scale, but by will. Valeria Richards, genius prodigy, shaped timelines with intellect alone. In their journeys, the Fantastic Four discovered the Reckoning War, an ancient truth that the Watchers had buried. Watu, long a silent witness, finally acted, and in doing so, revealed that no being, no matter how ancient, could escape accountability. Elsewhere, magic churned with upheaval. Stephen Strange died, but death was never final for the Sorcerer Supreme. In his absence, Clea, his wife and warrior queen of the Dark Dimension, took his mantle. She wielded chaos and light, uniting mystic realms under one banner of respect and fear. Wong, ever loyal, became more than a servant of sorcery. He became its standard bearer. Strange returned, not as a man, but as an idea reborn. Humility, sacrifice, and resolve forged anew. In the world of espionage and shadow, Black Widow hunted injustice with surgical precision. No longer a pawn of empires, Natasha Romanoff dismantled the structures that once shaped her. Yelena Belova, her sister in blood and mission, emerged from her shadow, forging her own path. The Red Room's ghosts were not forgotten, but they were no longer in control. Asgard rose again, battered but enduring. Thor, king of Asgard, bore more than Mjolnir. He bore the weight of ancient prophecies. With the Odin force now his, and the All-Father throne beneath him, he faced the truth that kingship was not glory, but burden. He confronted Gore the God Butcher, wielder of All Black the Necrosword, who believed no god was worthy of worship. In that battle, Thor learned what divinity truly demanded: empathy, courage, and mortality. Jane Foster, once Thor herself, became Valkyrie. She guided the souls of the fallen, wielding Underjarn, the all-weapon, and facing the void not with fear, but with compassion. She died, returned, and chose her fate anew, always a hero, whether god or mortal. The cosmos trembled under the weight of new threats. The annihilation wave surged once more. The Cancerverse beckoned with undying horrors. And behind the veil, the living tribunal whispered that the balance of reality had grown unstable. The Beyonder resurfaced, not as omnipotent child, but as fragmented will, seeking identity. From the shadows, Mephisto schemed. A devil unbound by hell, he brokered chaos across time. But now he was opposed not only by heroes, but by himself. Multiversal Mephistos formed the Council of Red, each variant vying for dominion over fate. They found resistance in the Defenders, Silver Surfer, Blue Marvel, America Chavez, Loki, and more, who defended the unseen layers of truth. The one below all stirred beneath reality. A primordial terror whispered in gamma pulses. Bruce Banner, split once more between man and Hulk, journeyed through layers of himself. The green door opened. The immortal Hulk emerged, demonic, vengeful, eternal. He was not merely rage, but retribution. He faced the leader, who manipulated hell and mind alike, and found that power corrupts not only governments, but souls. In the heart of humanity, Miles Morales swung with grace and grit. Brooklyn's Spider-Man, forever a symbol of youthful courage, faced villains old and new, and realities that sought to erase him. But his voice was clear, his legacy undeniable. He was not a shadow of Peter Parker. He was his equal, his echo, and his evolution. Across all realms, all timelines, all dimensions, the Marvel Universe stood not as a single narrative, but as a living, breathing mythos. Each character a star in a constellation of purpose. Each sacrifice a thread in an infinite tapestry. Each moment a story waiting to unfold. And still, the story was far from over. Because as long as someone dared to dream, to rise, to fight, and to hope, Marvel would continue. Ever expanding, ever evolving, ever marvelous. Beneath the fractured skies of the multiverse, new realities bloomed with every heartbeat of the cosmic loom. In these places, echoes of familiar legends took root in unfamiliar forms. Some bore the weight of worlds, others the burden of a single choice. The Watchers saw them all, their silent vigil cracked only by the stirring of Watu. He no longer merely watched, he warned. In one timeline, a world without Avengers fell into darkness, until the rise of the Phoenix Wolverine, his claws ablaze with cosmic fire, carved salvation from inevitability. In another, Dr. Doom ascended not through tyranny, but through sacrifice, becoming the sorcerer supreme of a war-torn Earth. The Doom above all. Across infinite reflections, Peggy Carter wielded the shield as Captain Carter, defiant and unyielding. In her world, the Hydra Stomper never fell. The multiverse was not chaos, but chorus, its harmony threatened by incursions. These collisions of realities foretold by He Who Remains, the last Kong, became cataclysmic. Kangs multiplied, warrior Kangs, philosopher Kangs, the Immortus, the Scarlet Centurion, and Ramatut, all vying for control over Time's river. The Council of Kangs fractured, turned upon itself, and unleashed temporal war. Only one could remain. At the epicenter stood Nathaniel Richards, a man cursed by destiny to become them all. He was both problem and solution. The multiversal war reshaped existence. Earth 616, the prime Marvel reality, became a nexus for convergence. Heroes across dimensions gathered. The Spider Army, led by Peter Parker, Miles Morales, Gwen Stacy, and Cindy Moon, swung between realities to defend the web of life and destiny. Morlun and his inheritors returned, draining totems of their essence. But the spiders fought as one. Even the spectacular Spider-Ham and the cyborg Spider Penny Parker stood side by side. In the darkest folds of reality, the symbiote god Null rose. He emerged from the abyss beyond creation, a void before light. With the all-black blade and his symbiote horde, he sought to drown the stars. Planets fell. Celestials died screaming. Eddie Brock, once a bitter man, now bonded with purpose. Venom became more than vengeance. He became the god of symbiotes, the new king in black. He defeated Null not with hatred, but with defiance born of love, for his son, for Earth, for choice. Elsewhere, the Eternals revealed their truth. Forged by Celestials, they had long lived in secret, their memories erased and rewritten. Icaris, Circe, Athena, and Druig uncovered the grand deception. That Earth itself was an egg, the seed of a new celestial. To protect the planet meant betraying their creators. They chose humanity. Deviants became allies. Together, they fought to preserve flawed beauty over divine mandate. The X-Men, forever reborn, reshaped their future. On the living island of Krakoa, mutant kind built a sovereign nation. Enemies became council members: Magneto, Apocalypse, Mystique. They conquered death with resurrection protocols, achieved unity through psychic links, and established power through diplomacy and force. The Quiet Council ruled, 12 voices for a fractured people. Jean Grey, Cyclops, Wolverine, Emma Frost, and Storm led in tandem, each a facet of the dream. Moira MacTaggart, once human, revealed her secret. She lived through 10 lives. Each timeline ended in extinction. She sought to break the cycle. Through her, Krakoa was born. But shadows lingered. Orcus, a human supremacist alliance, plotted extinction. Nimrod, the ultimate sentinel, learned to adapt. Omega Sentinels became prophets of machine destiny. And the Phalanx, the post-human future, loomed. The X-Men faced not just bigotry, but inevitability. Yet they fought. They hoped. They endured. Because being a mutant was no longer a curse, it was culture. As war brewed between magic, science, and gods, new teams emerged. The Midnight Suns, led by Blade and Elsa Bloodstone, defended against demonic incursions. Moon Knight, Mark Spector, the Fist of Khonshu, embraced his fractured mind to become a prophet of divine reckoning. He faced Zodiac, faced his own guilt, and stood taller still. The champions, Ms. Marvel, Nova, Ironheart, and Viv Vision, challenged injustice with youthful fire. They fought for tomorrow when the laws of today failed them. Riri Williams, armored as Ironheart, built more than tech. She built bridges. Lunella Lafayette, Moon Girl, and her red-scaled companion Devil Dinosaur turned genius into joy. As the next generation rose, old gods returned. The Celestials, awakened by humanity's chaos, judged Earth. Each soul weighed. Every being, god, man, mutant, machine, stood trial. Some passed. Some did not. But in unity, resistance was born. The heroes of Earth, fractured yet whole, proved one truth. Worth is not given. It is chosen. In the heart of that defiance, a new starbrand emerged. Not a weapon, but a child. A symbol of rebirth. The universe took note. Because even as entropy crept, as time frayed and gods faltered, one thing remained constant. Marvel's beating heart. A pulse of defiance. A whisper of power. A roar of wonder. And the story always continued. In the depths of the cosmos, where galaxies burned like lanterns in an ocean of ink, the one above all watched in silence. His presence was not of interference, but of inspiration. The stories told across space and time, across realities infinite and intimate, were his design, and yet beyond even his understanding, they evolved. Among mortals, faith gave rise to belief, and belief gave birth to power. The gods of Earth, Thor, Bast, Khonshu, and countless others, felt the tremble of prayer shape their forms. And yet, belief was not always holy. It gave rise to new threats. The elder gods, long buried, stirred. Thon, god of chaos magic, whispered from the shadows of Wundagore. Mountains bled. Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, torn between legacy and self, became both savior and catalyst. She rewrote reality not for control, but for healing. She built the Eldritch Library and paid the penance of memory. Elsewhere, Mephisto wove lies through the cracks of fate. He moved like oil across silk, twisting heroes into devils and truth into torment. He sought to forge a council of red versions of himself across the multiverse. But he was not alone. The Beyonders returned, architects of annihilation, their logic void of mercy. They unmade abstracts. Order and chaos died in silence. Infinity bled stardust. Oblivion watched, amused. To counter the threat, the living tribunal fractured into three aspects: equity, vengeance, and necessity. Judgment was no longer singular. Amid these tremors, Galactus fell, not slain but transformed. Reed Richards, the Maker, a broken reflection of hope, used the Lifebringer energy to turn Galactus into a force of rebirth. But elsewhere, in a darker timeline, Galactus bonded with the Void. He became the World Butcher. And from that union, even the Celestials recoiled. The Fantastic Four faced these futures. Reed, Sue, Johnny, Ben, and their children, Franklin and Valeria, navigated the tides of entropy. Franklin Richards, once the Omega child of infinite potential, saw his power fade. He became human, and yet his heroism never wavered, because courage was never cosmic. It was choice. The Marvel Universe reeled as timelines splintered and coalesced. Time itself became fluid. The TVA collapsed. Loki, no longer merely a god of lies, sought to become a god of stories. He embraced his fate as author and actor, stepping into the role of hero without shedding the skin of a trickster. He met other selves, Sylvie, Kid Loki, Classic Loki, and understood the cost of becoming. As time crumbled, Doom reemerged. Victor Von Doom, in armor reforged, sought to unite broken multiverses. Not as a tyrant, but as savior. He wielded both science and sorcery. He stole the power of the Beyonders and became God Emperor once more in a new Secret Wars. But this time he remembered. He remembered humility, and he fell not to defeat, but to surrender, to trust, to read. And together they rebuilt. A new multiverse, new Earths, new hope. But elsewhere, echoes screamed. Deadpool, the merc with a mouth, pierced the fourth wall and beyond. He fought writers, editors, and the concept of continuity itself. He was chaos incarnate. And yet, in his madness, he found moments of clarity. Love, loss, legacy. And so, even the fool became myth. As the dust settled, the cosmos grew quiet. But quiet was never still. The Phoenix Force stirred once more, this time not in anger, but in rebirth. Jean Grey rose not as a weapon, but as balance. Not to burn, but to heal. The Silver Surfer, now blackened from his penance as the Fallen One, soared once more across the stars, seeking redemption in light. He found it in a single act, saving one child from one dying world. It was enough, because even among infinite galaxies, the smallest kindness ripples farthest. And so the Marvel Universe endured, not through power, not through conquest, but through choice, change, and the courage to keep telling the story, to keep being marvelous. In the quiet between universes, where reality frays like threads at the end of a loom, a pulse echoed. It was not a sound but a presence, an idea taking root. The multiverse was healing. But healing is not return. It is change. From the cradle of existence came new voices. Kamala Khan, once a girl writing fan fiction in Jersey City, now stood as a bridge between worlds. Inhuman by origin, mutant by discovery, hero by choice, she led not as a symbol but as a story, one where anyone could rise. She inspired a generation born not from legacy, but from possibility. Miles Morales, Spider-Man from a world reborn, swung between skyscrapers and sorrow. He wore the mask not because he had to, but because it mattered. Because the world needed more than one Spider-Man. It needed hope. Across time, old legends found new blood. Riri Williams forged her own armor from grief and brilliance. As Ironheart, she challenged Tony Stark's shadow. She did not walk behind him. She walked beyond. Elsewhere, the mantle of Captain America passed. Sam Wilson bore the shield. He battled not just enemies, but expectations. He redefined patriotism not as a flag, but as a fight for all. Even the mantle of Thor shifted. Jane Foster, once dying, found purpose in the storm. As the mighty Thor, she faced gods and death itself. Her strength was not Mjolnir. It was her choice to rise. Legacy became evolution. The X-Men, long burdened by survival, found sanctuary not in secrecy, but in sovereignty. On the living island of Krakoa, they created a nation. For the first time, mutants thrived. Resurrection became law. Death, a delay. They rewrote the rules of life, governance, and diplomacy. Enemies became allies. Apocalypse became Genesis. Magneto became martyr. Charles Xavier, once a dreamer, became a pragmatist. But dreams bend under the weight of reality. Moira MacTaggart, once ally, now revealed as a mutant of reincarnation, shaped destinies from the shadows. She guided timelines like threads through a needle. And when peace frayed, war loomed. The Eternals returned. Immortal, ancient, hidden. They declared mutants deviants. Judgment Day came. Celestials rose not to destroy, but to evaluate. Every soul was weighed. And in that crucible, humanity was asked one question. Are you worth saving? Some fought. Some wept. Some changed. Even gods were judged. But it was a single act of mercy. A child's prayer, a hero's sacrifice, a villain's redemption that tipped the scale. Humanity endured. In the void beyond the stars, the annihilation wave stirred once more. But Richard Rider returned. Nova stood between light and endless hunger. He was one against millions, and he held the line, because some flames never die. Galactus, reborn as Lifebringer, sowed worlds with new suns. Silver Surfer, now whole, guided civilizations from darkness. Together, they became not destroyers, but gardeners. Even Thanos, the Mad Titan, rose again. But he no longer sought death. He sought purpose. In futures yet unwritten, his daughter, Thane, stood with or against him. Balance was never still. In the halls of the unseen, Watu the Watcher returned. His eye saw not just what was, but what could be. And in a rare act, he spoke. He warned. Because something stirred beyond the fabric. Not Kong. Not Doom. Not even the Beyonders. Something older. Something forgotten. A presence called the Lost One, devourer of abstracts, a god before gods. And it walked again. To face it, heroes would not be enough. Stories would need to converge. Champions, defenders, midnight suns, runaways, young avengers, all answered the call. Not for glory, but because it was right. And in the darkest hour, even villains stood tall. Dr. Doom offered knowledge. Sabretooth offered rage. Loki offered truth. because the end cares not for alignments, only resolve. As the stars dimmed, the living tribunal stirred once more. Judgment approached, but the universe did not tremble. It stood, together. Marvel was never just a name, it was a promise, that no matter the odds, the impossible could rise. And it did, again and again, because the story never ends. It begins anew, with every heart brave enough to dream. In the distant shadows of possibility, beyond even the watcher's gaze, echoes of futures untold vibrated like taut strings awaiting a song. From the shores of Battleworld's remnants to the revived threads of the Spider-Verse, stories multiplied not by fate, but by choice. Peter Parker, grown weary yet unbroken, found himself not alone. Ghost Spider, Silk, Spider-Punk, Spider-Man 2099, and dozens more joined in unison not as alternate realities but as a web of shared will. They spun salvation from sorrow. They turned exile into kinship. Together, they faced the inheritors once more, and this time the web would not break. Jessica Drew walked paths between spy and mother, vigilante and savior. Her choices wrote new codes in the DNA of Marvel's evolving myth. Ben Reilly, once lost to doubt, embraced his fractured psyche, becoming Chasm, a villain, a victim, a mirror. And even there, redemption simmered. Meanwhile, mutants and mankind reached into the stars. SWORD became not just a defense mechanism, but a diplomatic arm. Abigail Brand played chess in languages older than the cosmos. With Storm at her side, the solar system stood not as territory but as testament. Storm, goddess and queen, roared across galaxies, not for dominion, but for justice, and above them Arakko endured. Once a shattered extension of Krakoa, now a force unto itself. War-torn but proud. Led by legends, forged in pain. The quiet council balanced miracles with memory, but shadows crept even into paradise. Orcus, born of science and fear, moved in silence. Their aim was simple: erase the mutant miracle, forge a future without them. And so began the fall of X, a time where Krakoa bled, where heroes died and returned again. But memory frayed, trust eroded, mystique burned with vengeance. Destiny's visions turned to smoke. Cyclops was captured. Jean Grey rose and fell and rose again. The Phoenix sang, not in fire, but in sorrow. And yet, the heart of the X-Men beat still. Hope summers, Exodus, and the Five guarded resurrection like sacred flame. But even immortality had its cost. As Mars became planet Arakko, Earth watched. The Avengers watched. Reborn under threats both cosmic and internal, Earth's mightiest heroes faced multiversal incursions and ancient betrayals. Black Panther bore secrets beneath his mantle. Captain Marvel fought not just aliens but memories. Iron Man danced too close to godhood and fell, humbled. Thor wielded Mjolnir with reverence anew, tempered by grief. And Captain America, both Steve and Sam, stood divided but united. One shield, two hands, infinite meaning. The Illuminati rose once more, to guide, to contain, to compromise. Strange walked paths outside time. Reed Richards bent universes like origami. Namor whispered promises to oceans ready to drown the world. Black Bolt ruled in silence, his voice a last resort. And Professor X learned that dreams without transparency grow teeth. In silence, the Maker returned, not as Reed, but as what Reed could become. He offered order through obliteration. the Council of Reeds stirred. Endless variations of brilliance and madness, and all of it aimed at perfection through paradox. But the heart of Marvel was never in the mind. It was in the soul. The midnight suns rose from forgotten corners. Blade sharpened his purpose. Ghost Rider's chains burned anew. Elsa Bloodstone hunted the unthinkable. And Strange, even in death, taught through echo. Magic bent but did not break. The Darkhold scars lingered. Wanda, no longer the Scarlet Witch of Chaos, became a mother of redemption. She walked among those she'd once broken. She healed. She hoped. Victor Von Doom stood at the edge of all things. Powerless, then ascendant, then uncertain. For the first time, he questioned legacy. He questioned godhood. Valeria and Franklin Richards, children of future and impossible power, forged new frontiers. With them, the Fantastic Four reclaimed wonder. Not just exploration, but family. In the void, a whisper returned. Everything dies, but so does despair. Because in every loss, Marvel taught resilience. In every fall, a hand reached back up. No story ended. They changed, grew. Marvel was not one universe. It was all of them. Infinite Earths, infinite struggles, infinite chances to be better. And as long as one person stood against the darkness, be they god or mutant, hero or villain, human or alien, the story would continue. Because it had to. Because someone somewhere would always believe. On the fringes of space, Galactus stirred. No longer devourer without reason, but a force seeking equilibrium. He whispered across galaxies, not in hunger, but in balance. The Silver Surfer, once his herald, now shimmered with cosmic absolution. He bore light and lament, a wanderer who remembered every world lost and carried them as stars within. The Eternals re-emerged, not as gods but as flawed custodians, their secrets unraveled like ancient scrolls. Athena, Ikaris, Circe all questioned the machine that bore them. And with the emergence of the progenitor, a celestial judge, Earth itself stood trial. Heroes and villains alike were tested, not for power, but for purpose. Even the tiniest heart bore weight in the judgment. Phastos wept, Druig schemed, and Makary raced against inevitability. The Earth was not destroyed, but neither was it exonerated. It endured, and that, in Marvel, was always enough. From this reckoning, the street-level heroes reclaimed their corner. Daredevil walked again, blind but burning with belief. Matt Murdock shed his name and soul to become something more than vigilante. The fist of the beast. Kingpin's shadow loomed, but Elektra stood beside him, blade and resolve unshaken. Luke Cage, mayor of a fractured New York, bore justice as shield. Jessica Jones turned trauma into testimony. The defenders no longer hid in alleys. They stood in the light, even as darkness returned. The Hand, the Punisher, reborn in their grip, not as mere man, but as myth. Frank Castle, no longer just vengeance. He became war. But even war in Marvel is never final. Redemption chased every scream. And from these depths, young blood rose. Kamala Khan, gone and returned, inhuman and mutant, carved her place. Her powers embiggened, but her heart outshone them all. Miles Morales danced through dimensions, each leap echoing Peter's legacy and his own. He wasn't the next Spider-Man. He was Spider-Man. Period. Riri Williams built dreams from scrap and genius. As Ironheart, she didn't follow Stark's path. She remixed it. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur brought brilliance to the playground. Viv Vision searched for soul in circuits. And Nova, young and burning, flew farther than any map dared trace. The champions carried a fire the old guard once feared to lose. Not in rebellion, but in reminder. The dream wasn't theirs to inherit. It was theirs to define. And while gods rose and kings fell, while timelines folded and unfolded, one truth tethered it all. Marvel never ended. It renewed, with every breath, with every panel, every choice made by those deemed too small, too broken, or too late. And so long as those choices echoed, from mutant to man, alien to avenger, sorcerer to sentinel, the universe remained alive. Because in Marvel, the greatest power has never been flight or strength or magic. It has always been hope. From the multiversal firmament, echoes of fractured worlds sang in dissonant harmony. Every thread pulled tightened 100 more. But even as realities collided, Marvel's story remained grounded in the lives of its people. In Brooklyn, a boy named Sam Alexander touched the stars and remembered his father. In Chicago, Kamala Khan started a movement not with her fists, but with her voice. In Krakoa's waning twilight, Exodus whispered of messiahs and remembered martyrdom. Jubilee held her son close. Nightcrawler wrote a new gospel of mutant kind, one not bound by walls or dogma. Faith through action, hope through paradox. Jean Grey, reborn from fire and memory, stood not as a phoenix but as herself. Untamed, unyielding, unafraid. Scott Summers watched her with eyes that had seen too many wars and still found her in every one. They were warriors, yes, but also architects of tomorrow. Wolverine, tired but unstoppable, crossed blades with beasts and ideologies alike. Laura, his legacy, carved mercy in adamantium. Together, they proved that healing was its own kind of battle. In Wakanda, storms gathered. Shuri wove science and story into shields no enemy could breach. T'Challa, once king, now exile, walked paths beyond royalty. He listened. He learned. He questioned everything, even himself. And above them, Bast watched. The gods of Marvel did not rule. They reflected. Thor, weary and wiser, lifted Mjolnir not as a weapon, but as a prayer. To protect, to endure, to remember. Jane Foster, no longer defined by her mortality, embraced her own divinity. She was not a shadow of thunder. She was its echo made flesh. In the cosmos, the guardians evolved. Rocket aged but laughed louder. Groot spoke truths in silence. Star-Lord wore burden like armor and sang through the weight. Gamora, ever searching, found pieces of herself in kindness, not carnage. Mantis touched minds and changed fates. And in their orbit, Adam Warlock returned not to save, but to ask, what makes a soul worthy of salvation? The answer, as ever, was choice, not destiny, not prophecy. Choice. The living tribunal blinked. The Beyonders stirred. And still, Spider-Man swung across burrows, thinking not of timelines, but rent. Not of cosmic scales, but of Aunt May. His was the story most told. And yet, every telling revealed a new wound, a new web. He bore it all, not because he had to, but because he chose to. Across dimensions, Gwen Stacy, Mayday Parker, Anya Corazon, and Cindy Moon danced through destiny and duty. They were not variants. They were voices, not shadows of Peter, but stars of their own night. In the void between stories, Deadpool whispered chaos into canon. He broke the fourth wall, then rebuilt it with duct tape and drama. Logan scowled. Wade winked. Somewhere, Howard the Duck sighed. And the Watcher watched. But even he admitted, the tale was no longer his to tell. Because in Marvel, the universe was never finished. It breathed. It broke. It healed. And always it continued. In a realm beyond form, a quiet figure turned the pages of eternity. He was not a god. He was not a man. He was the storyteller. And he watched. As Earth 616 unfolded, not as prophecy, but as possibility. Back within time's steady rhythm, Reed Richards rebuilt hope from impossible math. Valeria cracked formulas that made reality blink. Franklin dreamed stars into being, and for once, remembered to smile. Sue held them all together, the invisible woman with strength stronger than steel. Ben Grimm clutched Alicia's hand and said, "It's clobberin' time." Not in rage, but in love. Johnny Storm burned brighter not to be seen, but to protect. The Fantastic Four weren't explorers anymore. They were anchors, to family, to future. In Latveria, Doom sat in silence. No conquest, no monologue. Just a man beneath a mask, asking whether the world ever needed him at all. And in the shadows of the Baxter building, quiet truths waited. Elsewhere, blade sharpened swords against the dusk. Vampires stirred in boardrooms and alleyways. But he stood between them and the world, unblinking. Ghost Rider burned new roads into realms unknown. Robbie Reyes, soulbound, engine ignited, carried vengeance for the voiceless. Strange winds blew once more. Dr. Strange, resurrected by consequence, bore new scars and older questions. Clea did not wait for his answers. She made her own. In the Sanctum Sanctorum, arcane truths turned pages faster than time. The midnight suns rose again, not as hunters, as healers of the forgotten. Magic, after all, was never just destruction. It was choice given shape. In space, the Shi'ar Empire fractured, and Lilandra's memory ignited revolution. Corsair died with a blade in hand and peace in heart. Havoc led a charge not of conquest, but of correction. Rachel Summers dreamed flames that birthed gardens. And across the stars, Carol Danvers flew alone. Not because she had to, but because the galaxy was hers to listen to. Captain Marvel heard every silence and sang light into them. The brood evolved. The Kree repented. The Skrulls remembered love. And once more Empire stirred. But Teddy Altman and Billy Kaplan, Hulkling and Wiccan ruled not by fear, but by fusion. They weren't just a couple. They were a kingdom, built not in conquest, but in care. Back on Earth, the young Avengers grew into something new. Kate Bishop's arrows wrote destinies in flight. Cassie Lang wore her father's heart and her mother's fire. America Chavez kicked through dimensions to find the one called home. And Tommy and David carved joy from uncertainty. No longer next generation. They were now. The future had arrived. And it didn't wait. Yet always Marvel remembered its roots. A man in a trench coat and a fedora walked unnoticed. A whisper of newsprint. A ghost of a byline. Phil Sheldon, camera in hand, still watched the skies. Because in this universe of gods and monsters, there were still people. Living, loving, hoping. That was the truest story. Not battles, not multiverses, not time undone, but a single act of kindness. A hand extended, a mask lifted, A story told. In the alleys between cosmic wars and hero legacies, a girl read her first comic. The pages turned not with awe, but with recognition. She saw herself, not in spandex or powers, but in truth. And in that truth, the Marvel Universe breathed anew. Luke Cage shook hands instead of throwing punches. Jessica Jones laughed again. Danny Rand taught instead of fought. And Matt Murdock, blind but ever-seeing, stood in courtrooms where justice bled slowly. Not just Hell's Kitchen's guardian, but its penance. From Madripoor to Harlem, echoes of the old world found rhythm in the new. Heroes aged. Some retired. Some ascended. Some simply stayed. Living quiet lives louder than any battle cry. Squirrel Girl wrote code that saved cities. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur built futures from blueprints and roars. Riri Williams challenged kings and corrected gods. And Ms. Marvel, still stretching, still stumbling, stood taller than legends. Because she believed. Because she dared. Because she cared. Villains changed, too. Victor Von Doom taught in secret. Norman Osborn repented in pieces. Even Sabretooth questioned the cycle. Not all found redemption, but all faced consequence. That was the shift. Marvel didn't erase its past, confronted it, rewrote it only when earned. Mutants stood not on the shores of Krakoa anymore, but scattered once more. Yet they remembered, not just the victories, but the voices. Destiny's diaries no longer bound the future. They offered guidance, not governance. Forge built tools that healed. Iceman froze extinction. Bishop carried torches across timelines. And Jubilee, bright and brilliant, taught children to laugh through fear. Storm watched the skies shift. Her power was never lightning. It was presence. It was promise. It was peace made manifest. And in Genosius rebuilt fields, Eric Lencher laid down arms. Magneto no more, just a grandfather teaching chess to orphans. Wolverine left no goodbye, only a note. Found something worth living for. The X-Men disbanded, then returned, then scattered again. Because they weren't a team, they were a truth. That survival is resistance. That difference is divinity. That love, above all, was evolution. And while Avengers reassembled and scattered with each crisis and calm, one thing remained. When the call rang out, they came. Not for glory, but for each other. Carol, Steve, Sam, Tony, Chala, Jen, Janet, Vision. They came. Through fire and fracture. Through death and return. Through secrets and forgiveness. Because in the end, Earth was worth it. Not the land. Not the nations. The people. Always the people. In the far reaches of memory and myth, Galactus stood alone. No longer hunger. No longer judgment. He had become something else. A gardener of stars. A witness to life, not its end. And beside him, the Silver Surfer returned. Not to serve, to sing. Each planet a verse. Each soul a note. In a universe vast and cold, they brought harmony. Meanwhile, Watu the Watcher watched less. He spoke more. Whispers at first, then warnings, then lessons. He no longer stood above. He stood with. And when the walls of reality trembled again, it wasn't for another secret war or crisis of timelines. It was for remembrance. The living tribunal reassembled the multiversal threads with reverence, not control. For even omnipotence had learned to ask. Eternity wept. not for loss, but for beauty. And in the spaces between, the one above all smiled, not as ruler, as reader. For stories are not owned, they are shared. On earth, Peter Parker sat beside May's grave, not in mourning, in conversation. He told her what the world had become. He laughed at his own mistakes. He whispered the names of those he loved and lost. And then he stood, old now, but not tired. Still my responsibility, he said, and swung into dawn. Miles Morales watched him vanish into the skyline, then turned back to Harlem, to Brooklyn, to now. He didn't need to be the next Spider-Man. He just needed to be Miles. And that was enough. At a cafe in Greenwich, Wanda Maximoff stirred tea. Her hands steady, her mind whole. A girl approached, uncertain. Wanda smiled. Ask. And the girl did. Magic changed. Because it was taught with kindness, not control. Stephen Strange passed by outside and did not interrupt. The Sorcerer Supreme was no longer a gatekeeper. He was a gardener too. In Wakanda, Shuri built bridges. Between realms. Between cultures. Between gods. T'Challa walked the ancestral plane, not as king, but as guide. The Black Panther is never one person, he whispered. It is always all of us. And across oceans, Namor watched storms form and dissipate. The sea no longer raged. It listened. The mutants had found a new island. Not a refuge. A home. No gates. No hierarchy. Just shared breath and shared purpose. They named it Memory. And from there, new generations of heroes rose. Unburdened. Unbroken. Undefined. In space, Nova carved comets into rescue paths. The Guardians of the Galaxy retired with a toast and a song. Rocket ran a shelter for wayward species. Groot taught children how to listen to trees. And Drax wrote poetry. Because why not? Because time had earned it. In the negative zone, peace held. In the savage land, nature sang louder. Even Mephisto found silence. Because in this Marvel universe, pain was no longer the final page. Hope was. Hope, stitched from battles and rebirths and compromise. Hope that endured because people chose it. Every day, not as destiny, but as defiance. And somewhere a child opened their first comic. A blank one. They held a pen and smiled. The story was theirs now, and it was just beginning. In the heart of New York, the Baxter Building shimmered anew, not as a fortress, but as a university. Reed Richards no longer chased answers in isolation. He shared questions. Sue Storm led lectures on dimensional ethics. Johnny Storm taught children about stars. Ben Grimm supervised playground construction. No one needed superpowers to matter. Just purpose. The Fantastic Four were not explorers of space anymore. They explored compassion. Elsewhere, a symbiote lived quietly in Detroit. It no longer hungered. It healed. Because Eddie Brock listened. Because it learned what fear truly was. And in knowing fear, it chose love. Venom became legend, not for battles, but for mercy. In a small Midwestern town, a girl named Valeria dreamed. Her mind outpaced her age, her questions overwhelmed her school. So Lunella Lafayette visited her, offered mentorship, offered friendship, offered a telescope and a wrench. Together, they built a satellite that whispered jokes to lonely astronauts. They called it Joy. In the halls of Asgard, things had changed. Thor was gone. Not dead. just walking Midgard. He wore a hoodie now. He helped repair barns after storms. He listened to thunder instead of calling it. And Jane Foster, now All-Mother, ruled with gentleness and justice. The Rainbow Bridge led not to realms of war, but to realms of art. Each color a frequency, each path a promise. In Latveria, the people voted. It shocked the world. But Doom permitted it, not because he had changed, because he finally saw his people, not subjects, citizens. He remained enigmatic, but quiet. The mask still hid scars, but not all of them were his. Back in New York, the Daily Bugle ran fewer headlines of fear, more stories of community gardens. Jonah Jameson retired, then unretired, then started a podcast called Hard Truths, Soft Hearts. It was surprisingly beloved. He even apologized once. Peter Parker called it a bigger miracle than Galactus going vegan. In Chicago, Monica Rambeau lit up neighborhoods. Not as a savior, but as a neighbor. She organized block parties. She flew kids to school one morning just because. Her power had never been light. It was joy. In Philadelphia, Kamala Khan opened a storytelling center. Not for heroes, for everyone. She believed that everyone's story mattered. Even the unfinished ones. Especially the unfinished ones. The Avengers still assembled. But less often. Not from crisis, but for dinners, for reunions, for therapy. Tony Stark ran a clinic for technopaths. Rhodey taught engineering in night schools. Hawkeye coached youth archery teams. Sometimes he missed. He always laughed. Bruce Banner tended a sanctuary for animals hurt by urban expansion. The Hulk hadn't smashed anything in years, but he still carried heavy things when asked. Carol Danvers trained astronauts in low-gravity empathy exercises. The Kree came to listen, not to conquer, not anymore. Even the Skrulls grew quiet, because the wars had taught them nothing lasted longer than kindness. And kindness was harder than infiltration. Harder but better. Galactus visited once. He planted a seed on the moon. It grew into a garden visible only at certain lunar alignments. He said it was for the Silver Surfer. But Norrin Radd never returned. Some said he became a constellation. Others said he was watching, still surfing, still searching. And in the ruins of past timelines, where broken versions of hope still echoed, a new voice rose. Not to erase, not to correct, to harmonize. It sang of pain and peace, of fire and forgiveness, of multitudes. The Marvel Universe at last knew itself, not just as a stage for battles, as a chorus, ever expanding, ever healing, never ending. In a quiet pocket of the multiverse, Watu the Watcher closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to feel. For centuries, he had watched without interference. But now, the stories no longer asked for judgment. They asked for presence. So he stood not above the earth, but beside it, as a witness, as a friend. Time, once fractured by hubris and haste, began to braid itself again. Strands once lost, Age of X, House of M, the Ultimates, the Forever War, slowly stitched into harmony, not erased, honored, remembered. Every variant became a verse. Every echo became part of the music. Dr. Strange floated above Kamartaj, conjuring silence. Not spells, For the first time in memory, the magic did not scream. It whispered, and it laughed. Wanda Maximoff passed him tea. She no longer bore the title of Scarlet Witch. Just Wanda. Mother. Maker. Healer. In deep Wakandan space, a ring station shimmered with vibranium light. Shuri led an initiative called Project Seed, to plant life on planets ravaged by ancient wars. Not to claim them, to thank them. Chalice likeness stood at the helm, not as a king, but as a steward, a monument with open hands, not clenched fists. Mutants once scattered, now thrive together on New Krakoa. It was not hidden. It was open. Humans visited, learned. Some even stayed. Because evolution was never meant to separate, only expand. Cyclops taught strategy. Jean taught compassion. Logan grilled steaks. He smiled now. Not often, but enough. Charles Xavier walked without assistance. Not because of medicine, because he forgave himself. In the negative zone, a nihilist taught conflict resolution. He failed often, but tried daily, because even the monsters had dreams. Even the void could grow things. In the depths of the ocean, Namor brokered peace between the sea and the surface. His trident became a pen. He wrote treaties and poems. In Queens, Miles Morales taught dance workshops. Swinging was still his thing, but rhythm was universal. And every move told a story. He painted murals with Gank. Of heroes, of ancestors, of tomorrow. In Los Angeles, America Chavez opened a portal for refugees from broken dimensions. The sign said, "All realities welcome." She meant it. Stephen Strange sponsored the permits. Daredevil offered legal aid. Jessica Jones offered street smarts. Luke Cage offered housing. Danny Rand brought snacks. No one questioned it. In Deep Time, Kang watched with uncertainty. Not because his plans failed, because the future finally surprised him. There was no empire to conquer, only joy to understand. And he did not yet understand. But he stayed. That was enough. Above all this, not above in power, but in perspective, Franklin Richards smiled. He saw all futures. He chose the one where love endured, where stories never ended, where children asked questions and adults listened, where gods walked barefoot and villains painted sunsets. And Galactus, the gardener of moons, whispered, "Let there be stories." And so there were. Marvel. Forever.